Welcome back, Sebastian here. So continuing my series looking at each team in the Constructors after the first 6 races, today we'll be doing Haas. So first taking a look at their race record over the first 6 races. So in Bahrain, Hulkenberg's 16th place, Magnussen 12th. And then Saudi Arabia, their first points of the season, Hulkenberg getting a 10th place. And Magnussen with his first of several races this season, where he drove quite erratically, helping Hulkenberg get that 10th place. Picked up a boatload of penalties as well, but managed to finish in 12th. Then we get to Australia, double points finish for the team, Hulkenberg in 9th, Magnussen in 10th, great result for them. Japan, Hulkenberg 11th, just outside the points, Magnussen 13th. Then we got to China, Hulkenberg points again in 10th, and Magnussen 16th, picking up a penalty for a collision with Yuki Tsunoda. And then we get to Miami, where Hulkenberg just missed out on points again in 11th, and Magnussen finished 19th with another boatload of penalties. Of course, I know all the talk recently after Miami is the fact that Magnussen's on 10 penalty points, and of course, if you get to 12, you get a 1 race ban. So, and the first of those points, I believe, don't expire until basically March of next year. So yeah, Magnussen's on pretty tight ice, so it'll be interesting to see how things go for the rest of the year. I think for the teammate head-to-head, honestly, I think it's a bit of a surprise to me. I think qualifying has been definitely a bit worse than it was last year for Magnussen. So for Hulkenberg, the qualifying head-to-head 5-1 advantage for Hulkenberg. Average qualifying delta 0.237 seconds, which is actually an improvement from last year overall of 0.303 seconds. So actually the gap's gone down a little bit, but Hulkenberg I think has been a bit more consistently ahead of Magnussen. And that kind of bears itself out in the average starting position. For Hulkenberg 11.75, for Magnussen 15.13. So about three and a bit positions difference. Obviously, with those back 5 teams, it's very, very tight between them. So it's understandable that only a 2/10 gap would give you that much of a gap in terms of positions. In terms of points, Hulkenberg definitely has the edge there. 6-1 in favor of Hulkenberg. Average finishing position 11.63, and for Magnussen 13.8. Now, moving to my expected race model, I was a bit surprised by the result. I checked to make sure that everything was calculated properly, but for both drivers, they're both in the negatives here. So for Hulkenberg, negative 3.24, and for Magnussen, negative 1.98. And of course, this is just for the main Grand Prix results, so it would not include the results from the sprint. So basically, so a bit of an odd one there, but I guess the cars generally qualified quite well, or at least Hulkenberg has, and the race pace definitely is a big improvement from last year. So it still seems like they're kind of falling a bit short of where they could be ending up based on where they're starting. But nonetheless, I do think overall for Haas, this season has been a pleasant surprise. The tire wear, the race pace is definitely a massive improvement compared to where we were last year, although the data doesn't really bear that out. So 2022, the first year of the new regulations, 37 points total, 15 points after the first quarter of the season. They ended up finishing 8th in the Constructors with an average pole gap of 1.839 seconds. 2023, 12 points total. 8 of those points came in the first quarter of the season, and they ended up last in the Constructors, the first time they had done so since 2021, which was the Schumacher-Mazepin year. Their average pole gap improved quite a bit, 1.188 seconds that year. And the interesting thing to note, and this is something that Haas has had an issue with basically since they first came into F1, is that they generally start years quite well, but they never bring upgrades, or the upgrades they do bring don't really help the car. So it'll be interesting to see how that works this year for Haas, and see if they can kind of carry forward this momentum that they've had over the first quarter of the season, or if they kind of drop off and they kind of go back to being the 9th or 10th quickest car towards the end. But anyway, 7 points so far, 7th in the Constructors. I think they would be super happy with 7th if they managed to finish there. And average pole gap of 1.1 seconds. So they had 8 points after the quarter mark last year, but of course the really chaotic race in Australia definitely contributed to that. I believe Hulkenberg finished 7th in that race, so 6 of those 8 points were just from that. Whereas here you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different races, or basically 4 different times you finished in the point. So a lot more even of a distribution there. So yeah, I think overall for Haas, definitely a massive improvement for the first through the first 6 races compared to last year. Pleasantly surprised. I think a lot of the news coming out of the team, especially with how their team principal Gunther Steiner left the team in January, I think there was definitely really kind of painted a picture of a team in disarray, and that isn't really the case. They've looked, quite good on track, and yeah, definitely racy with the Racing Bulls. And it'll be interesting to see how they fare against Alpine, especially when Alpine starts to kind of understand the car better and their upgrades start to come and help as well. Now, of course, this is a team with one empty seat for 2025. Their lead driver, I guess, Hulkenberg, has already signed a contract with Sauber, which will become Audi for 2025. So they're definitely on the market for a new driver. Could that driver be Oliver Behrman? Possibly. Could they replace both drivers? Magnussen's on the verge of a race ban. Honestly, hasn't been that great this year. May they try to pick up another driver, perhaps a Bottas, for example. So those are definitely storylines to follow, through the next, third of the season or so. But yeah, I think interesting start to the season for Haas. Definitely exceeded expectations in my view. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.